programs, most fans do, but at what cost? And that was also delicate. It's been an interesting time in Tallahassee over the last, frankly, 5 to 6 years.
As Florida State tries to return to the college football elite, do fans base their expectations on the players you have in the field, or are they basing their expectations on the successes of the past?
I think it's based on the successes of the past. When Florida State kind of hit their downturn in the earlier part of this decade, and I would tell people, well, things are cyclical. It's a matter of how long you stay down. Let's get it back on track. Here's where we missed. Here's where we failed. Let's do this, this, and this. People didn't want to hear that. When you have 14 consecutive seasons in which you finish in the top 4, and you win umpty-ump bowl games, 2 national titles, compete for 3 more national titles and all, I think there is a tendency, without question, to get spoiled. The landscape has changed. The ACC, while not a dominant conference like the SEC, is much improved, comparatively speaking, to when FSU was on their dominant run. And I don't think they're ever going to see a run like that again from really anybody, whether it be Southern Cal out in the Pac-10 or anybody else for that matter. It's just that, the evil parody word, as they say, has creeped in. And it's not realistic to expect to win 11 games every season and not have a lull. But I do believe the expectations are certainly based on all the years of successes. And at the very least, they want to be in the mix to play in BCS bowl games, and that would mean playing for the conference championship. And I don't think anything less than that is acceptable amongst the fan base.
Not that we have problems with people expecting things here in the University of Tennessee, but you were in the hotbed of high school football, or one of the couple in the nation down there in Florida. Mm-hmm. Does recruiting get tougher and tougher every year? Because obviously, not only do the Florida schools want the Florida high school players, but now Florida is so nationally recruited, it has to be getting more difficult. Has that led to some of the you don't want to say lack of wins, but obviously it makes it tougher to get the good players.
Yeah, and you can say lack of wins. I mean, it's no secret. I mean, you have 9-4 last year, but 7-6, 7-6. I mean, that's tough road to hoe here. I mean, people aren't going to listen to that or be happy about that. Yes, the answer to your question is it's extremely difficult. Not only that, if you figure that the rise of a program like South Florida, even USF, I've long thought, I'm from that area, I long thought that could be a program that could have success at a high level because you figure where they're located in the state. In Tampa, there's a lot to do. It's easy to entice kids to come there. You got the beaches and everything else. It's a good place to recruit, and it's a huge university. I mean, they've got all the things, the amenities that a lot of the big-time schools that we talk about year in and year out have. So you throw them in the mix. You throw Florida's rise to prominence. You throw in Nick Saban at Alabama, recruiting heavy in Florida as well. Yes, it's become far more difficult. It used to be you just had to beat Florida and Miami for the Florida kids for the most part, and you almost had the pick of the litter when every year you were a top 5 team. You didn't have to really pitch them too much. But that's the danger in having a downturn because you get passed by pretty quick, and it happened to coincide with, unfortunately, the rise of the University of Florida. And, that obviously doesn't sit well with the fans either. So that's where Jimbo and Coach Coley and others who are making inroads in recruiting have to do a really good job and figure out the kids they're bringing in here, are they going to be impact players sooner rather than later?
Was there a perceived drop in the quality of recruiting prior to the struggles at FSU, or was there an on-the-field struggle and perhaps a drop in recruiting because of that?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both. We used to Florida State, if you look at recruiting services,
that was my last one.
Year in and year out, under Coach Lilly, who was the chief recruiting coordinator, would have top 5 recruiting classes. And I remember going on the air and saying, folks, look around. I don't want to besmirch kids, but I got to tell you, if that's a top 5 class, and we would talk about these classes 2 years after the fact, so you'd had a chance to see them. you'd say, if that kid's a 5-star and this kid's a 4-star and that kid's a 5-star, well, you know what? Whoever is evaluating these kids is not doing a very good job, because we had a number of kids that were highly touted that just weren't very good football players. You know, they might have fit in another program, but they weren't working out here. You couple that with obviously what was a tough go for Jeff Bowden, and some of the other coaches that went on to other programs, Mark Richt to Georgia, for example. And I think that combination proved to be deadly for Florida State, and it's as if one day they woke up and realized we don't have the athletes. And then you put together a couple poor seasons, and now you're that much deeper in the hole. I don't know that the fan base could see it coming. I think they felt a little blindsided because on the surface they were being told they had top 10 classes. But in reality, you know, it's not just about having a class that's ranked highly in the eyes of some recruiting service, but rather, what do they do on the field? How do those players fit in your system? And I think we got, you know, when you're successful, sometimes a program just recruits itself, and you throw your name out there, and you ask every 5-star in town if he wants to play, and you hope you get your share. And maybe we got a little lax. Florida State got a little lax in the evaluation process. And so I think it was the perfect storm. And, you know, consequently, Florida State has been kind of out in the weeds, as I say, for the last 7 years. Pretty much a rise here and there, followed by an immediate fall, and no real dominant season.
You're listening to Out of Bounds with Spanky Brown. Jeff Cameron, our guest. He's with 1270 The Team down in Tallahassee. Afternoon drive host, Jeff. The glaring thing that jumps out at me is the lack of quarterback play or quality quarterbacks. Were those guys misevaluated, or did they just not develop? It seems like Drew Weatherford was there forever and never amounted to anything.
Yeah, and you know, he was brought in the same class as Xavier Lee. Let's not forget.
Right.
And Xavier Lee was recruited by every team in the country. So
yes.
You know, he was, Texas wanted him, Alabama, LSU, Tennessee, Florida, Miami, USC. Everybody wanted Xavier Lee. So it's hard to say that Florida State blew it by bringing in Xavier Lee, because everybody would have whiffed that he said yes to them, I suppose. But I would suggest that you're right. You know, Darryl Dickey was here, and he was a guy that was in charge of developing the quarterback. So was Jeff Bowden. For whatever reason, that marriage didn't seem to work. We had a hard time getting kids to play up to their ability. I think you throw in the mix that Florida State suffered greatly along the offensive line. You know, Jimmy Hagens was the longtime offensive line coach at Florida State, who, I'll just be frank, I didn't think did a very good job. After he was essentially let go, Mark McHale came in, and Mark McHale was at the tail end of his career and didn't seem to be too happy to be on the road recruiting. So Florida State whiffed not only with kids, but they whiffed with a couple of coaches, and you cannot have a sieve for an offensive line and expect your quarterbacks to develop ever. And, you know, those kids got beat up bad early in their career, and I don't know that they ever recovered.
The old joke around here was, why did the chicken cross the road? And that was to win the ACC, which is, you know, it was actually a good
had
move.
To do that, didn't
well,
you?
I had to, but it was a good move on Bobby's part. But when Bobby made that move, BC, Miami, Virginia Tech weren't in the ACC, so obviously it's a little bit different story down there. But I will say, I'm sure from all of us, nobody wants to see Georgia Tech or Wake Forest playing in the ACC championship game ever again.
That's for sure.
ever again. Where does the hope lie this year? A lot of, I think, 7 starters lost on defense, but linebacker play going to be stout again, it looks like.
Yeah, the linebackers are very talented, and that's one thing that really hadn't slipped all that much in Florida State's decline. The linebackers have been pretty solid, and another good group there. I mean, you're talking about Dakota Watson, who's going to play in the NFL, and Kendall Smith, who's, I think, got a chance to be a real good middle linebacker. So they've got Nigel Bradham, who's a beast of a kid who played a lot as a freshman last year. So they've got talent in their starting group. A little thin in terms of depth, so they can't afford injury. But Patrick Robinson is a kid that plays corner, who a lot of people believe might be Florida State's first real lockdown corner since perhaps Tate Cody, who got drafted by the Chargers a number of years ago, and maybe a Bryant McFadden, of course, who's made a fine career in the NFL with the Steelers and others. Robinson's, this is a money year for him, so if he's going to showcase that skill, it's going to be a big year for him. And I think if he can do that, Florida State's defense can cheat a little bit and shade some help over to the other side and maybe not get exploited there. I'll be honest with you, first time in a long time, the real hope for this Florida State team this year is their offense. I think Christian Ponder takes a big step forward now. He's the guy. He's not having to battle at the quarterback position. Coach believes in him. Showed some signs last year, has to step up. Offensive line no longer so green up front and looks to be